Some of the most terrifying stories out there aren't make-believe. Nope. They're the real chilling accounts of people who, without even knowing it, came face to face with pure evil and somehow walked away. We're about to dive into some of those unbelievable close calls.
I mean, think about that question for a second. It's horrifying, right? The idea that the person you just passed on the street, your neighbor, or even your date could be hiding this monstrous, dark secret. Well, for the people in these stories, that fear became terrifyingly real. These stories prove that evil doesn't always show up with a scary mask and a weapon. Sometimes it wears the most ordinary, unassuming disguises. Okay, let's get into our first case file. So, we're starting this off in 1978 at an event that's supposed to be a core memory for most teenagers, prom night. But for one girl, it turned out to be anything but ordinary. So, 16-year-old Bridget Geiger wasn't expecting some huge romantic, movie moment night. Her date, a guy named Jeffrey, was known for being super shy. But what she experienced went way beyond just typical teenage awkwardness. The reality of who she was actually with, well, it was something nobody could have ever imagined. The night just kept getting weirder and weirder. First, he shows up so nervous he can't even pin on her corsage. Then, at the actual prom, he makes it clear he wants absolutely nothing to do with it. And then, poof, he just disappears. Bridget eventually finds him sitting on a curb outside, eating McDonald's. He'd gotten himself locked out. He completely ruined their night, and all he did was mumble an apology as he drove her home early. You'd think that would be the end of it, but Bridget actually agreed to see him one more time. He invites her to a party, but when she gets there, it's just him and one other friend. And get this, the big plan for the night was for Jeffrey to hold a seance to contact the devil. Yeah, understandably, she was totally creeped out, left after a few minutes, and that was the last time she ever saw him. So, 13 years go by. Bridget moves on, she lives her life, and that bizarre prom night is just a weird, distant memory. That is, until July 22nd, 1991, when a news story breaks that brings it all rushing back. Police in Milwaukee, Wisconsin get a call and they enter an apartment. And what they find inside? Well, it's a literal house of horrors. This quote right here describes the scene they walked into. And the apartment, it belonged to a man named Jeffrey. And here it is, the big reveal. Bridget's awkward, nervous prom date from all those years ago was Jeffrey Dahmer. He started his 13-year killing spree and claimed his very first victim just days after taking her to prom. That creepy feeling she got at his party, that was her gut instinct screaming at her to run. Wow, that story is just, it's a chilling reminder of how close we can come to danger without even knowing it. Okay, our next case brings us right into the modern world of online dating, where a simple swipe right led one man into a perfectly laid trap. Now, this wasn't some random, unlucky encounter. This was a setup from the very start. Derek, who was a brand new police officer, matched with a woman named Leah. Right away, she suggests this really remote park for their first date. Then a strange van blocks their car, but the driver gets out, apologizes, says he's a caretaker. It all seemed kind of innocent, but it was just a dry run for the real attack. Moments later, the van comes back and traps them. The caretaker jumps out with a pipe and starts demanding Derek's stuff. But the real shock, the moment that flipped everything upside down, was when Derek's date, Leah, stood up, walked over to the attacker, and said the same thing. She wasn't a victim. She was the bait. So, how did he get out of this? Well, remember, Derek was a new cop, and he was armed. He drew his concealed weapon, and his attackers took off. But what's truly terrifying is what the police found when they located that van. I mean, look at this list. This wasn't a robbery kit. This was a toolkit for abduction and murder. Derek's training and being prepared literally saved him from an unthinkable fate. All right, our final case today is one of the strangest I have ever come across. It's about a killer who literally couldn't stop himself and who haunted the police with his own voice, confessing to them over and over and over again. So this timeline tracks the spree of a man the media called the weepy-voiced killer. It all starts at the end of 1980 with an attack and an anonymous tip to the police. But by June of '81, after murdering Kimberly Compton, the calls, they changed. He started confessing directly, like he was tormented by what he'd done. And as you can see, he even called back 2 days later just to say sorry before killing again the next year. It was this bizarre, horrifying pattern. Just listen to the actual words from his call to the police, right after he murdered 18-year-old Kimberly Compton. "Will you find me? I just stabbed somebody. I can't stop myself." It's this twisted, messed up cry for help, even as he's confessing to this brutal murder. This became his thing. Terrible violence, followed by this strange, tearful remorse. And his psychology is just on full display here. Only 2 days later, he calls again, not to confess a new crime, but to say this: "I'm sorry what I did to Compton. I couldn't help it. I'll try not to kill anybody else." He sounds like a man completely at war with himself, but of course, that promise meant nothing. So the downfall of this killer, whose real name was Paul Stefani, was just pure irony. He attacked a woman named Denise Williams, but she fought back hard and injured him. So what does Stefani do? He calls 911 for an ambulance for himself. But the dispatcher, who had heard the recordings of the weepy-voiced killer that had been all over the news, immediately recognized that unique voice. In the end, the killer literally caught himself. Okay, so we've looked at 3 killers who were hiding in plain sight. But, the more important story here is about the people who survived them. How did they do it? When you put these cases side by side, you see these totally different paths to survival. For Bridget, it was all about intuition, that gut feeling telling her something was deeply wrong. For Denise Williams, who was attacked by Stefani, it was just raw courage, grabbing a bottle and fighting for her life. And for Derek, it came down to preparation and training. 3 different people, 3 totally different keys to making it out alive. What this really shows us is that there isn't one single playbook for getting through the unthinkable. Sometimes it's listening to that little voice in your head. Other times it's making a conscious choice to fight back. Or maybe it's having the right skills for the worst-case scenario. It's all about using whatever you have, your instincts, your environment, or your training. And that kind of leaves us with one final thing to think about. In that moment of truth, when everything is on the line, what would you rely on? Your gut, your strength, your wits? It's a question worth asking yourself, because as these stories prove, you just never know when the answer might save your life.